Disney has to be worried right now because of what's been going on with Rachel Zegler. Now, for people who haven't really been following this news right now, basically she's been making comments about the new upcoming Snow White, and these are comments from a video about like a year ago, or several videos from about a year ago, where she was kind of just more or less crapping on the original movie, saying it's very dated and has like old sensibilities, and they're trying to change it. I mean, saying she was saying stuff like the prince is a stalker in the original one, and this one, Snow White, isn't about trying to find love, or even though that really wasn't the original movie. But she also said that she didn't really like the original movie. She saw it when she was a kid and got scared of it or something like that. So it really doesn't help right now, because when you're making a movie based off of an existing property with an existing fan base, presumably you want to bring in that original fan base. But when you're just saying like, we don't like the original movie and we're doing something completely different, well, then you're kind of starting from square one. And not only that, it also upsets people to the point where they're going to lash out on you. And that's what we're also seeing with now the son of one of the original directors of the Snow White movie. I'm talking the 1937 one. He's coming out to talk about his thoughts about what's going on with this movie, and it really doesn't look good. So the Telegraph had an interview with David Hand, who worked as a designer in the 90s, and whose father, also named David Hand, was one of the directors of the original film. Hand doesn't directly criticize Zegler, but unloads pretty heavily on the film, which obviously has not yet been seen by anyone outside the studio, even in trailer form. But we have seen those set photos, and those were mocked pretty much by everyone, to the point where Disney tried to initially deny that those photos were theirs, until they had to kind of sheepishly say like, okay, yes, those are our set photos and stuff like that, which was pretty hilarious when it came out. It's a whole different concept, and I just totally disagree with it. And I know my dad and Walt would also very much disagree with it. Han said he called it a disgrace, and that Disney is trying to do something new with something that was such a great success earlier. Their thoughts are just so radical now. They change the stories. They change the thought process of the characters. They're making up new woke things, and I'm just not into any of that. I find it, quite frankly, a bit insulting what they may have done with some of these classic films. There's no respect for what what Disney did and what my dad did. I think Walt and he would be turning in their graves. Holy crap. It's pretty bad. And he is talking about how they're basically changing the original Snow White. Now, this is a story that initially Disney did adopt from the Brothers Grimm story, so it's obviously their take on it was pretty different than what the original one was. And this isn't the first time we've seen a reimagine of it. I mean, not too long ago, when this one came out, 2012. So Snow White and the Huntsman came out 2012. Charlize Theron as the Queen, Kristen Stewart as Snow White, and Chris Hemsworth as the Huntsman. And that movie was like, it was a mediocre movie, but for the most part, no one cared, because obviously this was something different. It wasn't trying to be the Disney one. In fact, it wasn't even made by Disney, so it was just something completely different. And this one, though, the new one, it seems like they're trying to almost evoke the original one, but at the same time, just be something completely different. Now, I think if they set out from the get-go saying like, yeah, we're going to reimagine Snow White and we're doing a different take on it, but still trying to stay faithful to the original story, then that's one thing. But that doesn't seem to be what they're doing with this. In fact, it just seems like, according to what Rachel Zegler has actually said, that she doesn't like the original movie, and that it's good that they're changing it. And because of that, they've actually been getting a lot of hate from just pretty much everyone. And you're more or less alienating the hardcore Disney fans as a result of this. And you got this article from Slate from a couple days ago, how Snow White star Rachel Zegler managed to upset both Disney fans and conservatives, which is just hilarious, because when they cast a Latina in the role of a character who is literally described as having snow white skin, then they're trying to obviously pander to a certain demographic of like left-leaning people. And now people like that are upset with what they're doing, because it really doesn't appeal to them, because those people still like that. I mean, this article from the Hollywood Reporter actually even says that, about how there was right here. A TikToker reportedly racked up nearly 10 million views, arguing criticizing Disney princesses is not feminist. Not every woman wants to be a leader. Not every woman wants to or craves power, and that's okay. It's not anti-feminist to want to fall in love and to get married, to want to stay home. None of these things make you less valuable. And that's absolutely true. It seems like the only demographic that they're trying to appeal is basically the feminist demographic who was a fan of the original one, but also hates the original one, and also is a man-hating feminist type, which is not really a good demographic considering it's probably, there's people out there like that, but that's such a small demographic that the budget that they're spending on this movie isn't gonna recoup from that. And Zegler did put out a tweet recently. I hope the world becomes kinder, and this is a lot of it in response to what happened and like this backlash that she's getting, which is kind of ironic considering what she's done in the past. I mean, you got this response from Gina Carano, which was hilarious, just his boop. Because for people who don't remember, Gina Carano was initially attacked a couple of years ago or something like that because she didn't have pronouns in her bio, and the person who actually basically brought kind of sick the hate mob on her was Rachel Zegler herself. And after a hate mob came after Gina Carano for not having pronouns in her bio, then she just put down the words beep, bop, boop. And now Rachel Zegler is crying, saying like, I hope the world becomes kinder. And this is just a great response. But of course, today, Rachel Zegler just kind of has an anti-male repost that she put on her Twitter. So I guess the whole idea about like, I hope the world becomes kinder is a very short-lived one. Now she's just going back to being a man hater or something like that, which is, I mean, it really just doesn't help. But I think a litmus test for what Disney is going to do with this movie is ultimately what happens with this new Hunger Games movie that's supposed to come out in November. Now, the Hunger Games doesn't have the same fan base as what the Snow White one does, because I mean, it did really well when it came out around 10 years ago. That franchise did, and it launched Jennifer Lawrence's career. But we'll see what happens with this, because I know people aren't necessarily craving a Hunger Games prequel, but I think this is a movie that the studio expected to do really well. Or, I mean, obviously, if they're going to spend the money on it, they're hoping probably it'd do well. And if Disney is probably watching this, because if it really does succeed and makes like $1 billion, for instance, then they'll probably be like, okay, we don't have to worry about Rachel Zegler being toxic to our brand because this movie that she starred in did well. But if this movie just tanked at the box office, which it could have done regardless of what happens, then I think Disney will be taking a step back and thinking like, what should we do with our new Snow White movie? Because that's supposed to come out in March of next year. Now, what to do with it is kind of up for debate. Are they gonna, some people are saying like they should just put it on Disney Plus to try to mitigate their losses. Some people say they should just cancel it outright, which I don't think they'll ever do that. And one of the more sensible things I've heard people say is like maybe just delay it for like a couple years until this dies down or whatever. And maybe that is the best solution. But again, once they start publicizing it for the marketing push leading up to its release, no matter what happens, people are going to come back to, well, all this stuff with Rachel Zegler and things like that. So that's just going to, it's really a short-term solution, and I don't think it'll help. I mean, the only thing they probably could do is once these strikes end and Zegler's actually able to go out and talk about this, then maybe she can try to clarify and more or less walk back what she said, and maybe that can work or work her magic to bring some people back into the fold. But I think the damage has been done, and ultimately this is going to be one of those movies that probably Disney is going to take a big loss on. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below, and if you like this video, make sure you click that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.